Good evening. The meeting of the Monroe Township Board of Education will come to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Had a meeting, even though it's adjourned.
May we have a roll call, Mr. Gorski?
Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Here.
Mr. Tesler.
Here.
Ms. Antilles.
Here.
Mr. Braverman. Mr. Chiarella.
Here.
Mr. Kaufman.
Here.
Mr. Masters.
Here.
Mr. Poi.
Here.
Mr. Prezioso.
Here.
Mr. Zarneski.
Here.
Madam Board President, you have a quorum.
Wow, that was loud.
Thank you. In accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law, the Monroe Township Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted September 19th, 2013, 1, at all schools, 2, Home News Tribune, 3, Cranberry Press, 4, filed with the clerk of the municipality. At this time, we will go to our reports from our student board members.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Events coming up late September and early October are September 26th. There is a senior parent information session at 6:30 p.m. in the Monroe Township High School Performing Arts Center. The Monroe Township High School College Fair will take place on October 3rd at 6:30 p.m. in the Media Center.
The homecoming football game for our very own Monroe Falcons is on Friday, October 4th, and there are SATs at the high school on October 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will go to number 6 on our agenda, a video distribution proposal, and I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Antilles as the chair of the Finance Committee.
Okay. I believe we're going to show a PowerPoint on this, or?
We were going to come back for further discussion and open board discussion on the video server that got tabled at that first video because there was a 2-2 vote, and we said we would move it to the board, but then we would have a discussion. Reggie, Bob Mealy, and Boris Ladek could not make it, but they are here today to answer any questions.
Okay.
Why don't you give a recap of what the...
Yeah, Reggie, why don't you come on up and help us out here? So can you recap the whole process with the video server at the high school? This was brought to the Finance Committee many months ago. They had some initial questions. We then provided some educational background to the Curriculum Committee. The Curriculum Committee supported the decision and said, please bring it back to Finance now that we understand the educational value of it. We then brought it back to Building Grounds and Finance, had further discussion, but we were unable to have you there as a resource for some possible questions. We had said that this was part of the initial bond referendum and that we were proposing to move forward with this video server at the high school. So if you could just give us a quick recap of the components of it, and then the board said they wanted to have an open discussion, possibly ask you, Mr. Mealy and Mr. Ladek, for some supporting questions or clarity.
First of all, the video distribution and storage system, it would provide the capability for productions that are produced mainly in the TV studio, but actually anywhere throughout the building to be distributed in the building. Currently, the videos that are produced in the TV studio, excuse me, are uploaded to YouTube and then they're played at a later date and time. We do not have the capability to distribute live productions in this particular school, although in the old building we had that capability. And a lot of that is due to when we designed this building, a lot of the technology components we put off to the end because the technology changes so rapidly. Well, we're now at the point in time where we need to get those productions which are produced either in the TV studio or throughout this building, get that distributed throughout the building. So this system would allow us to do that. Right now, we don't have that capability. That's an overview of the system and what it would do.
Okay, is there any questions for Mr. Washington from any members of the board. Mr. Poi?
When I listened to the earlier presentation, it appeared to me that this...
Would you please use your microphone?
When I was listening to the earlier presentation that was done for the committee, it appeared to me that this distribution system had multiple capabilities, and I was wondering, is it possible to eliminate some of those capabilities that are not as badly needed or that are needed as much, and therefore reduce the cost of this?
Well, the system as designed has been watered down some, mainly in that I think the biggest concern that you generally have with technology, especially in an educational environment, is its ease of use. It has to be something simple that a classroom teacher can get started and go on real quickly. Otherwise, you lose that momentum and that opportunity to present it. This system has been scaled back. We wanted a system that was flexible enough to grow so that we don't get it locked into a piece of technology that's going to be dead in a year or two, but also be modular so that should some other new technology come 2-3 years from now, we can easily adjust this system too.
See, I really believe that there's a lot of value in being able to do the live video broadcasting. I've had experience with that, and we have found it to be very, very valuable in an educational setting. But it seemed to me that the proposal contained, as I said, additional capabilities that I did not see were such a pressing need, and I didn't know how much they actually added to the final cost.
Well, most of the cost of the system, one is certainly the live portion, but also contained within that system is the ability to, let me just paint a scenario for you. When Comcast comes out to bring video to the school, they give you 3 cable boxes. If you think about your home, let's just assume you have 4 sets, you need a cable box for each set. Think about this building here, it's 95 classrooms. You got 3 cable boxes. If you want to create a ride real quick, who's going to use these 3 cable boxes? So what this system allows us to do is take those 3 boxes, put them on the network, and now all classrooms have whatever's broadcast over the TV, the Comcast channel. So those kinds of things kind of like add up to drive up the cost as well. But I think it's a necessary component. Otherwise, unlike the other 7 schools, this particular school doesn't even have cable TV in it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Chiarella?
Can you explain what the technological requirements would be for instance, like Wi-Fi? I'm not a technology guy, so I don't even know the proper words to use, but the proper terminology. But from a Wi-Fi perspective, or how much bandwidth we would need, and do we have that capacity right now?
Well, it will be looked at just as another device on the network. So most of the devices here are wireless. We are running the latest standard in wireless in this building. So, and I hate to start the whole techno-babble thing going with you, but we currently can get about 300 meg shared over the wireless network. Now, if you're hardwired, obviously that's going to be even faster. You're talking about gigabit speeds then. So it is the most robust network design there is out there today.
Thank you.
Anyone? Mr. Prezioso?
When you say wireless, are we going to wire any rooms up, or everything's going to be wireless?
It will tie into our network, which is both wired and wireless. So the video distribution server itself will be hardwired, but you can access it wirelessly.
Anyone else? Mr. Masters?
Just bear with me, I'm going to ask some of the same questions I asked at the finance meeting, because you weren't there, and I'm going to check the answers. So what's the bandwidth in the building then from this to a classroom? What would that be?
The bandwidth from
the video distribution server to the classroom. What's the max bandwidth?
If you're looking at a hardwired connection, you're looking at anywhere from 1 gig to 10. If you're looking at wireless, again, it's about 300 shared, 300 meg shared.
Shared. Over the routers.
Because it's wireless. Wireless is a shared medium.
And what would be the endpoint in the classroom then for this?
The classroom teacher, they have several ways they can do it. They can play it wirelessly over the network, either from their iPad or their computer, or they can plug in a cable into the laptop and into the hardwired network. It'll work either way.
And we have enough bandwidth in the building then? If we distribute something big happens, a space shuttle launch from our generation?
Yeah, we'll be fine. We'll be fine.
Now, I know there was talk about, I mentioned storage area, or an SAN. Could we use something like that, or is it just not applicable to this situation?
Again, with a lot of these technologies, you could certainly go out and buy a ton of hard drives and just start storing video there. The problem and the challenge with that is it easy to use? This gives the classroom teacher an interface that is very simple, very much like YouTube, something that most people find easy to use. If we start just throwing storage out there and make it hard and difficult for teachers to use, it simply won't get used.
Now, I know you mentioned cable boxes. Have we talked to Comcast about just getting more cable boxes?
Yes, I called Comcast and they told me, sure, we can give you additional cable boxes for $4.99 per box per month on to infinity.
What I'm going to do in that. I'm sure you did that already.
Yes.
Was it cheaper?
It's absolutely not cheaper, and there's no end to that cost.
Now, I know we also talked about choral concerts from building to building, so we can stream live events in addition to caching stuff on the server?
Absolutely. Because when we built this building here, we ran our own fiber in between what's now the middle school and the current high school. So we have pairs of cable fiber running from those two locations. So theoretically, you could have some lecture going on in this building and then someone at the middle school also viewing that video or that lecture.
That's dual strand between the schools?
It is dual strand.
Somebody else can jump in, I'm sorry.
Mr. Prezioso, did you have a question?
Yeah. Reggie, we would need cable boxes to get a signal from the TV studio?
Absolutely, because you got to tune into a specific channel to see whatever's coming out of the TV studio.
So the TV studio right now, we can't use it at all for any part of the school?
That's correct. Like I said, what the TV studio is doing now, they make a recording and upload it to YouTube.
But we
Anyone
could
else?
host our own video server, not using regular technology. I'm just trying to look at the alternatives.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
We could host our own video server, our own mini YouTube if we really wanted to.
Yes.
Just it wouldn't be, you're saying, as convenient.
Correct.
Anyone else? While we're waiting for Mr. Masters?
Thank you.
I forgot what he was going to say.
Ken?
And I don't want to put Mr. Poy on the spot, but I remember after a previous discussion at one of the committee meetings that Mr. Poy brought up some good points, because in the beginning when we were talking about this, we were talking about being able to do Pledge of Allegiance as a school and stuff like that, but I remember being able to do that over a PA system when I was a kid. So that's why I didn't understand it, and then he helped clarify some of the other things that could be done with it. And I don't know if you remember that or if you want to bring that up, but there were some good points.
Well, certainly doing the morning announcements, that's a daily type of activity. But there's also other times when either the guidance department or the administration may want to share information with the entire student body. And it's impractical to bring students into an auditorium setting for that type of thing and really have their full attention. Auditoriums are more performance-based as opposed to informational transmission-based. But if the presentation is being done by, let's say, the head of guidance or Mr. Goodall, and it's being broadcast live to all the various classrooms simultaneously, you have much more attention being given by the students because, one, there's a smaller number of them in a smaller setting. They're being supervised by a teacher, so the conveying of the information is much more effective. Also, some uses I've seen of it is you bring in a speaker on some topic. I don't know, maybe the school is doing some kind of fundraising for cystic fibrosis, let's say. and you may have students in the school that have cystic fibrosis. And I've seen parents come in and somewhat share with the entire student body what it's like for their child, to get up each morning and deal with that condition. And when the students, once again, are in a classroom setting, seeing that, you get much more information, valuable information to the students because they're just much more attentive than they would be in any other setting. And our society is so video oriented these days that whenever you're doing it that way, you've got a much better chance as opposed to just hearing something over a PA system.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Mr. Tesler.
Thank you. Just a few things. On the Comcast boxes, we already own, I think, 3 Comcast boxes that they donated.
Well, they didn't donate it. It's part of the franchise agreement.
Part of the franchise, what we get. And also, I think a clarification, correct me if I'm wrong, is the difference between having shared files and playing, a WAV file or an MP3 file on your computer and a video system is also the video system does compression.
Absolutely.
So that means, if everybody's streaming the same video, it saves bandwidth because you're doing compression. So it's, so it's like you're streaming Netflix. They're not streaming the same movie. They're just sending the bits and pieces. So that's that's an advantage that this would give us in just using a shared file system.
That is correct. It does compression and multicast. Again, I didn't want to get into all the...
Right, I don't want to get too technical. And the thing that happens now is when everybody uploads their video, the morning announcements to YouTube, and everybody tries to watch it, that goes out on the net, and everybody has tried to watch a video on YouTube, and it stutters and buffers, and you give up. So I guess that's pretty much what's happening in the classroom now. And this system will move the video right in the building, as opposed to having to go out on the net and using our bandwidth.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
I do disagree with your compression, but I'm not going to get into it. I mean, JBoss does the compression, Tomcat does compression, Jetty does compression, Apache web server does compression. That's not a big point. The issue I'm having is I'm still with this. Are we? It just sounds like there are other solutions that are significantly cheaper. And it sounds great, and I hear what Doug's saying about all this cool stuff. We can stream all kinds of, I know we've talked about moving graduation back into the schools. We can stream graduation. He's not here. Or the choral concerts for overflow. The other issue is are we going to run into bandwidth issues a year or two from now? Because what's going to happen is everybody's going to start putting everything on this server, right? So we're going to have, and it's all HD, because everybody's going to want to run HD. Nobody's going to run a standard definition. And if you're saying you have 300 megabit, right, unless you upgrade those routers, because they're what, they're Gs?
They're Ns.
You go to AC or something, right, you'd have to go to something like that. We'd have to upgrade every router in the school. I just don't want this also to be a stepping stone to saying, all right, now we need new routers, and now we're going to need other stuff.
Okay, I'll never say we won't need any more bandwidth. I won't ever say that because, as I described it before, bandwidth is like a dog chasing his tail. You'll never catch it. You'll never catch it. Much bandwidth as we give, they will use.
Mr. Kaufman?
On the non-geek front, I guess I want to just clarify for everybody here and for folks that have been sitting in Board of Ed meetings for a long time, and for the legacy people that have been here for a while, Jeff and Reggie, a lot of the functionality that we're looking to approve here is stuff that we want to be able to carry over from our capacity that we had at the old high school into this high school, which means that functionality or the core directives of this technology were in the original ed spec for this school, correct?
That's correct.
So when questions had come up about, well, how are you going to fund this? Why are you using bond money, to fund this new technology? Well, the solution may be new, but the ask or the requirement is old. It was part of the original ed spec for this building. So don't consider this as a new thing coming along that we didn't plan for. We planned for it. We're just looking to adopt it now because technology is growing, space is becoming cheaper, technology is becoming better. We have the one-to-one initiative going here at the high school. So I think we consciously decided to delay the implementation of the solution until we had a really good a definable requirement from the curriculum level, which is really why we're here today. So I know that I'm sorry I wasn't at the finance meeting. That might have been a concern about why we're using bond money to fund this. That's clearly why it was or being considered, because it's part of the original ed spec when this building was built. It's not new, it's just being done now.
Anyone else? Okay, do we need to have a motion to accept this? With,
Do you have the cost? You know the cost?
you want to make a motion? Ms. Antelis will make the motion.
Oh, sorry. I'd like to make a motion that the board adopt the video distribution proposal.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Kaufman. Comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll have Mr. Prezioso.
This bond money that we're using, how much is it?
It's approximately $113,000.
That's part of the $2,500,000 we have left over, correct, from last year?
That's correct. It's part of the remaining surplus in the bond account.
How much is left in the total left in the bond?
Approximately $2.9 million.
But we have a set price of what this is going to cost us, correct?
Yes, as it was presented to the Finance Committee, I think it was about $113,000.
Okay, then we will have a roll call.
Ms. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Mr. Zarneski?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Poi?
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso?
Yes.
Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes.
Madam Board President, motion for video distribution system with bond referendum funds passes.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we will have a presentation of student achievement by Dr. Hamilton, but before he does that, he has a special recognition this evening.
Yes. Before I get into my the student achievement presentation this evening, I'd like to ask our boys from our soccer team if they would just come over and stand before the board, if you will. I asked them to come out tonight because I received an email that I wanted to share with all of you, and to take this opportunity that I wanted to take this opportunity to share with you. I'm going to read this email, and then I have a couple of things I'd like to say to our boys. The email says, "Dear Dr. Hamilton, I realize that every student athlete represents their school every time they put on the school uniform, but rarely do you witness such a display of sportsmanship that occurred on Saturday morning at the South Brunswick versus Monroe boys varsity soccer match. As team photographer, I was privileged to capture what transpired so that I could share it with you and the parents of our players. The Viking player suffered a head and neck injury in a collision with his own player and remained on the field for a lengthy period of time while medical attention was provided. After about a 40-minute delay, the player was stretchered off the field to a waiting ambulance. What you see in the attached photo should make your administration and your school very proud. The entire varsity squad took a knee on the field as a sign of respect and concern for the fallen player from the opposing side. Upon seeing their actions, the South Brunswick coach also went out of his way to stop by the boys and acknowledge their actions. In today's often competitive environment, these actions are a welcome sight indeed. More importantly, they speak volumes for the leadership and moral character that is the Monroe soccer program and starts with the coaching staff. These boys acted out of respect and with no thoughts of recognition, but I believe their actions are exactly the kind of behavior that need to be brought to your attention. Monroe Township Falcons soccer was victorious in more than just the score on Saturday. These players took representing their school, coaches, team, family, and their sport to a whole new level, and I am sure you will swell with pride when you see the photo. And I wanted to take this opportunity to tell you how proud I am to receive that kind of email from someone who took the time to acknowledge the poise, the dignity, and the character you displayed as you represented our team. And I wanted to say that publicly to you because you are representatives of this school district and pillars, examples of the kind of pillars of character education that we want to instill in all of our students. And I wanted to say that to you before this board and before this camera and before this audience. So thank you so much. In our next edition of the school story, which we will be presenting and distributing to all of our residents, I will be sharing the picture with the public as well. So, gentlemen, thank you very much.
And before you sit down, we see this happen all the time on the fields and on the ice when there's a pro sport and somebody gets hurt, and the respect that's shown from our pro teams, and to have somebody from Monroe, a team from Monroe, to emulate that is just outstanding, and we respect you for doing that and showing your respect to somebody else who's been injured on a different team. So again, we thank you and appreciate what you do to represent Monroe Township.
Thank you, gentlemen. And kudos to the coach as well for instilling those principles in you. So, and the parents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good evening. So tonight we are presenting our student achievement report. Our presentation tonight is actually twofold. One is we have an obligation to share these results with you, but the other part of it is tonight we get to see the fruit of our labor, all of the work that has been underway since the current administration, and the results that we are sharing this evening are reflective of the commitment of our staff who have followed the district vision and mission statement, those folks who have worked diligently to make sure that our goals are successful, and more importantly, our students who sit in our seats every day and come before us looking for knowledge and information, and then to be able to articulate and express those examples of success in standardized testing. Now, this data is not data that we created. This comes from the New Jersey Department of Education, Measure Inc., and the AP College Board, which provides the AP data. We've only taken the data and put it together in a format that is easy to view, and Jeff is going to facilitate this presentation tonight.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So as Dr. Hamilton mentioned, how are we doing? Is our work in balanced literacy, mathematics, curriculum instruction, technology, teacher and principal evaluation, is it all paying off? What are the results? And so we wanted to take some time here to showcase and highlight some of our data, and to use it both as a celebration of our efforts and over the last 5 years, and also some areas where we think we could continue to grow from. First thing I want to present to you is New Jersey Ask data in language arts literacy from 2009 to 2013. And what you'll see here is a chart on total proficiency, that's regular proficiency plus advanced proficiency. And you see these lines here, these vertical lines. You have to keep in mind that the third grade class of 2009 became the fourth grade class of 2010, the fifth grade class of 2011, the sixth grade class of 2012, and the seventh grade class of 2013. And you could see along these paths from the fourth grade, significant gains from where they started out in total proficiency, not just minimal gains that might be, just some slight variation, but these are significant areas, 70 to 87, 75 to 81. All of these are I believe, significant gains.
Yeah. Jeff,
Oh, you tell me where you want me to go. It's okay. No problem. No worries. I could do it anywhere. All right, good. Better?
Is that?
Good. I'm trying to lose some weight. All right, so, and again, a visual representation from the grades of advanced proficiency, of total proficiency. So as kids get ready for their high school experience, I'm very pleased to say that 91.6 of all of our students are achieving proficiency in both either proficiency or advanced proficiency in language arts literacy, and that is significant data. In mathematics, then I wanted to break this down to advanced proficiency by itself. And so how do we take the good kids and get them to great? And again, there is some pretty good movement here on all areas in advanced proficiency. So in getting kids ready for college and workforce, career ready, literacy is the foundation of the Common Core standards and what's coming ahead, and how well you present, read, write, articulate, synthesize your thoughts. And I do believe this is a very good indication of that, as evident by our student growth. And again, just a chart to represent it. Okay, so we looked at our math scores, and I'll highlight a different piece here. In 2009, you could see our kids in total proficiency in mathematics, and then you could see the changes over the 5 years. And there have been some fluttering here and there, so the total proficiency has not been as impressive as the literacy proficiency, but I do want to show you that there were gains in each area. And here's some big jumps here. And again, this column is higher significantly every year from 2009. But the advanced proficiency is really where we soar in Monroe mathematics. And I will tell you that we've had, it's not in this presentation, but we had 127 kids that scored a perfect 300, a 294, or a 285 in the math portion of the NJS this year. 82 perfect 300 scores in mathematics. And that is something to be very, very proud of. Those numbers are extremely high in the county and in the state. And you could see growing all the way through 35 to 61, 24 to 52. All very significant jumps in advanced proficiency. A look at science is only tested in the 4th and 8th grade and at the high school, and I'll show you the biology results in a little while at the high school. But again, solid growth from 2009 to 2013 in both the 4th and 8th grade in advanced proficiency. We wanted to include our special education students in this analysis, and it's not, I want to take a little bit of a look. First, you need to know that I did not take out the special education students in the data that I just showed you. That was inclusive of them because we believe all our kids are all of our kids. So I thought that was significant to tell you. If I were to pull them out, the general students, those numbers would have been higher, but we did feel that the right indication was to include all of our students. I will show you some growth from 2012 and 2013, and these are areas that we're always looking at. So you see in the green are the areas where it moved in an upward motion in literacy and mathematics. And over here it didn't as much, or it declined a little bit. So as we were discussing and analyzing the data, part of it is that we start to classify our kids down here. And so the services don't necessarily take hold right away. But it looks like significantly, without fail, there's only one equal, we are right there in improving instruction as we tip over and we get to the middle school and our special education students. I'll tell you also.
Jeff, before you move on,
yeah.
I want to comment on this slide. You've heard me talk before about early interventions and front load approach. And what we've been doing is looking at identifying our youngsters as early as possible so that by the time they begin their middle school experience in preparation for high school, we've begun to remediate those deficiencies, because we know that if we don't address them adequately, certainly by the time they reach middle school, those youngsters will not be prepared for the HSPA. And this data shows that that front-load approach or those early interventions are manifesting themselves. And of course, each year we will begin that process earlier so that the data continues to hopefully show that kind of pattern and those trends toward improvement.
You could also, as I was doing this data analysis, the special education numbers are smaller than the regular education numbers, so percentages move more significantly when you're talking about a data set of 100 versus a data set of 500 in a class. So I did want to point that out as part of the mathematical analysis. And it's just a couple of visuals that represent the same data. High school student achievement results. There's some major highlights that we wanted to emphasize this year from last year because they weren't minimal in gains. They were significant. Our SAT scores, our average SAT scores in reading, mathematics, and writing went up 19 points in reading, 14 points in mathematics, and 10 points in writing. We thought that was incredibly strong achievements. It wasn't a couple points here or there. There's over 10 points on the average in all of them. They are all above the average, by the way, in the state and nationally. Our number of advancement placement tests, just statistically, our kids, even if they're the same kids, are taking more advanced placement tests. So kids are definitely raising the bar towards really high levels of achievement. And then our percentage of 3s, 4s, and 5 on the AP exams, combination of 70% of the kids that take these exams scored a 3, 4, and 5, which means they're eligible for college credit, advanced credit while they're in high school. Now, you should know that we, as part of being in an AP class, we mandate that they do take the test. So this is everybody that took the test, not just the elite or the people that felt that they wanted to. This is everyone, and 70% of our kids achieved there. And again, some visuals that we'll put up on the website, and we'll post this up there for you to do some further looking at the numbers and the graphs. Our end of the year biology test, again, a very significant increase in our advanced proficiency from 12.8% to 20.5% from last year to this year. And overall proficiency rose 3% over a 2-year period. And lastly, I wanted to just highlight some HSPA results. Grade 11 from 2009 to 2012-13. Powerful in language arts literacy, getting close to perfect. Advanced proficiency numbers have gone way up in this 5-year process. Mathematics, again, a significant climb. Advanced proficiency in mathematics, again, very high. So what does it mean? It means we really believe that our work is paying off, that everything that we fight for so passionately has an impact on our students in this community. And we really believe that the work is paying off. And I can't thank enough the administration, the teachers, the Board of Education, the public for supporting our efforts to high expectations for every one of our kids. Here are the data sources for your reference also that you could do a little more research on your own.
And Jeff, before we conclude, some other data I'd like to share with you. As you know, the board has invested a lot into supporting AVID, the AVID initiative that we started several years ago. And the goal of AVID, of course, is to encourage those youngsters who would normally not be your honors and AP level students, but to provide them with the kinds of supports that would, of course, prepare them and give them the prerequisites. So our current AVID numbers at the high school, almost 40% of all AVID students are now enrolled in an AP or honors levels course. That's extraordinary news. There are 161 AVID students in the high school, and 60 of them are enrolled in an AP or honor levels course. So, of course, this is an opportunity to toot our horn, but if not for the work of our principals and our teachers, these results would not be possible.
Yeah, I have a question, and this is great. I think the results are laudable, so I'm not trying to take away from any of this. I'm just really asking this for my own edification. Maybe I read this improperly, but there seemed to me to be a dip between 8th and 9th grade. Is that just moving in the school, from school to school? Because I see the same thing with my kids. You know, they're doing well, and then they...
There is a dip nationally, generally around 4th grade, and then again around 7th grade. We see those dips. In New Jersey, in particularly, the test changes sometimes. So from year to year, you may have students who do very well, but the next year, that same group of students may have a decline, and that could be the result of either problems with the curriculum that we need to remediate, or problems with the barometer in which kids are measured, the standard on the test that is changed. But there are some opportunities for growth here as well. There are some dips, and we have to identify what those dips represent. We also have to look at how do we continue to close the gap between our special ed and our general ed students. The numbers at the high school are incredibly impressive in terms of the amount of work that we've been able to do with accomplishing closing the gap between those two populations. These results in that regard are extraordinary.
No, I agree. Thank you.
And another piece, just as a forethought. So next year comes these park assessments. These park assessments will be every school year. So right now, there's no 9th and 10th grade standardized testing. There's just the 11th grade HSPA. So in place coming will be a 9th grade test, a 10th grade test, 11th and 12th grade. So these park assessments it'll be interesting to see how they compare to the current New Jersey ASC and the HESPA testing, and how it ties to the new Common Core standards.
And on that, we have actually been selected to be a pilot district for the park. So we will actually, our teachers will be able to participate in sampling the park assessment. So they'll get some exposure to what the new assessment is going to look like. Our students will get some exposure, and we'll be able to be part of a national study.
It's a field test only for a couple of sections, so we'll get a view of what they look like.
No, I think this is a good opportunity. The parents moving into Monroe are doing so because of how well our school district is doing. And we, as board, have been raising the bar for all our students and supporting them with the resources and the programs they need so that all of them are successful. And I think this is a good presentation tonight. Mr. Hoyt?
I would like to request that the board members receive, at least I'd like to have a paper copy of this, because if I attempt to view it from the website, sometimes I can't read the data. It's blurred.
Yeah, we're actually going to send it home to you on Friday.
Okay, and I was curious, you did disaggregate the data on the special ed students, but do we have a sufficient number of Hispanics or African American students in the system that we also get the disaggregated results there?
Yeah, any subgroup, and I will provide that information to you in a further analysis. It was so big. Sure. The presentation could have been so big, and I wanted to keep it simple for a board presentation, but I would be happy to show you all of those results for all of our subgroups, including economically disadvantaged, Hispanics, Black,
Just from what you recall, is there a significant gap between, let's say, our Hispanic students and our Caucasian students, or our Black students, African American students? Do we have some gaps there that
I wouldn't be comfortable talking about it without the data in front of me.
Okay, all right, I understand that.
Previous trends, though, I can speak to that. Previous trends, our gaps really are not that significant between our African American and white students or our Hispanic and white students. There are some significant gaps between our white and Asian students that we have to look at.
Mr. Kaufman?
Thanks, Jeff, for all this incredible detail. I know it's a lot of work to put this all together, but in years past, we used to get breakdowns of the test results school by school, and I think that's a piece of information that's very valuable for us to evaluate. I mean, it's easy to know grade levels at certain things because the middle school has certain grades, high school has certain grades. But the aggregated data for the elementary school, we want to be able to highlight schools that are doing exceptionally well because the numbers could be being brought up by a high-performing school, and a school which may need to have a little bit extra attention given to it, maybe kind of getting lost in the aggregated data. So I can't speak for everybody else here, but I would like to be able to see this level of data at the school level so we can see where things are working super well and where we need to improve.
You want to talk on that? I know Dr. Hamilton has been working individually with each principal on disaggregating their own school data. With the onset of our student growth objectives this year as part of the teacher evaluation process, that's going to be an important piece. And also, we sort of anticipated questions coming out of this, and we wanted feedback and questions like you're giving us, Mr. Kaufman, Mr. Poi, so I could give you further information towards your specific interests. So I'll be happy to put that together for you and get back to you by the next board meeting, actually.
Ms. Antelis?
Oh, sorry. Microphone guy today.
Yeah, while we're sharing, he's got his own down there. Just want to make a comment. When I see numbers like this is our pay. We don't get paid for doing this. This is our pay. Watching these numbers go up, seeing our students do better and better, this is a great collaboration to me between the administration and all of the staff. And I'd also like to thank our parents, because without the parent support, these numbers would not be going up. I think every study has shown that when parents are involved with the staff, and we have a great staff, this is when our children do good. So I thank you, Dr. Hamilton, for these numbers, for Dr. Gorman, and to all of our staff, teachers, paras, bus drivers, everybody makes it all possible. So thank you.
Mr. Tesler?
When I was thinking about the data, which is pretty impressive data, and our scores have gone up, what occurred to me also is that over the past so many years, 5 years or so, we did this while opening a new high school, renovating schools, shuffling buildings, and all that as well. So to do all that and increase these scores, I think it was quite a feat. Another quick question is, next year or the year after, whenever the park starts to kick in, is there going to be a way to compare the park data between the old data or something? Like we don't have a clue yet because,
I could speculate based on different tests that I've seen. Well, the park assessments are formative in nature. So, for example, there's a reading program called Achieve New Jersey that determines Lexile levels where you read at. If you get a question right, it takes you to a different question. If you get it wrong, it takes you to a different question, and then it gives you a determined piece. That's how the park works. Okay. So there will be different test questions for different students based on their individual needs, and that'll be instantly given back to teachers and us, so we could use that information to improve upon. I don't know how they can possibly compare the two, but I'm sure that is a question that's been asked many times, and I can't wait for the answer.
Right, and the park assessments are all computer-based.
Everything is computer-based, and I could do a follow-up with you on the complexity of the park assessments, which are very, very significant. It would really, you'd say, holy cow. This is really high-level critical thinking and problem-solving, all online, a lot of video-based, a lot of manipulation. So yes, it is very different than the way we are testing now, which would be consistent with how educational trends are moving.
It is. I know back in the day when I used to take tests for my own work and going for Microsoft certified engineering, everything was on the computer, and it did exactly what you just said. If you got something wrong, it would take you on to a different path, and well, at the end it would say a big screen, you pass or fail, but that's not the goal here. And that's even when our children go to college and things like that. I know for my own daughter, a lot of these assessments and tests are all computer based too. Thanks.
Mr. Masters?
Great news. Amy said it perfectly, but I mean, finally, some really positive slides with some really great stuff to make us feel good about why we're here. And again, the administrators and the teachers, they're really putting in. When we were over at Barclay Brooks back to school night, and that room was packed, and Oak Tree it's packed with parents and teachers and administrators, and everybody's they're sitting there, they're late, they're standing there late with parents, and they're answering questions, and the parents are involved, and this is what happens. When everybody gets involved and the teachers are involved, and we got some of the best teachers here and the best administrators. This is awesome. It's definite proof that we're moving the right way. I don't know how anybody could say we're not moving in the right direction.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Dr. Gorman. At this time, we will go to number 8 on the agenda, the 2014-2015 Budget Philosophy Development and Board Discussion. I will give this to Dr. Hamilton and Mr. Gorski.
Yes, in preparation for our meeting this evening, Mike and I have prepared a very short, is it on, or are you just working off the pipe? Okay. Mike and I have prepared a very brief PowerPoint presentation that we'd like to share with the board and the public this morning. It is reflective, you can control tonight. It is reflective of previous conversations with the Finance Committee, during our board retreat and some of the previous conversations. So we're prepared this evening to go through some of the elements of what the 14-15 budget will entail, and then our recommendations to you as a board regarding budget philosophy. And Nancy, I just realized what you were saying to me. Thank you. All right. Mike, you ready?
Yes, sir. These are the current Monroe Township Board of Education members: Mrs. Kathy Koloponowicz, Board President; Mr. Ira Tessler, Board Vice President; Ms. Amy Antelis, Finance Chair; Mr. Braverman, Marvin Braverman, who's not with us this evening; Mr. Ken Chiarella; Mr. Lou Kaufman; Mr. Lou Masters; Mr. Doug Poi; Mr. Anthony Precioso; and the Jamesburg representative, Mr. Robert Zarneski. One of the most important considerations in determining the tax rate is the ratables and the increase or decrease in ratables. In the 12-13 budget, $100 of the $145 average tax increase was due to a $78 million decrease in ratables. So you see how impactful the ratable base, which shares the tax levy, is. And previously, my predecessor enjoyed tremendous years of growth in the district, which helped keep Monroe's taxes at the lowest levels in the county. We still are amongst those levels. And preliminary conversations with the township officials indicate that this year we may have a slightly higher than last year ratable base. It's too premature to talk about that yet. Last year the numbers were flat, which was a relief after the previous 2 years, but we might actually get some tax and budget relief this year with the growth in the ratables. As Mrs. Koloponowicz asked before, there's approximately $2.9 million remaining of high school bond surplus as of September 25th, 2013. This surplus is a result of the effective management of the construction of the school, limiting change orders, which efficiently managed the construction project and had monies left over while completing the project ahead of schedule. State aid. This district is grossly underfunded in terms of state aid. Last year we received $2.6 million, that's less than $400 per pupil in state aid. With state headlines recently about revenues not meeting state budget figures, and some other tragedies occurring down the shore which may require investment, we're not very optimistic in the 14-15 budget that we're going to have an increase in state aid. We have some legislation that was partially prepared in district that's still very much live and could afford us a few $1 million of extra money, and we're going to continue to push that. But it's our recommendation to base the 14-15 budget on the same state aid figures as the previous year, $2.6 million. Dr. Hamilton is engaged currently in the review of all extracurricular, co-curricular, and athletic programs. He's already looked at enrollment numbers and participation numbers, and we're getting a little more in-depth now with cost reviews and value analysis to determine if we're getting the most bang for our bucks in these programs. Additionally, in the next year, we're going to look at revenue generation through perhaps advertising using our athletic programs, and also cost sharing. And another resource consideration is other proprietary funds. The district has currently a daycare program called MECA. We have 31 students enrolled in that program as of today, and an early childhood enrichment program with 41 students enrolled. Both those enrollment numbers are indicating that we're in a profitable situation now, and we're eagerly awaiting the September financial information to confirm that. This has a long-term positive outlook on the district, because if this can become profitable, which it appears to be now, it can address the loan quickly and then even perhaps make a contribution back to the budget and the taxpayers. The next page shows the calculation of how much we can grow the 14-15 budget based upon current guidelines. This is a projected schedule of CAP and how it's calculated. The details are there if you're interested, but the bottom line is going to CAP, if the board should be so inclined, would grow the 14-15 budget tax levy by $3,372,352 as compared to the previous year. Now, although that sounds like a very large number and it seems like it may be a lot of growth, the next slide shows one of our major constraints, and that is in the area of increased enrollment. We're eagerly awaiting for the October 15th ASSA data. That's where we go and count every child in the district and every school, and we have an exact enrollment number, which is audited by our independent auditors. But in lieu of not having that information tonight, I prepared a 3-year trend line which predicts 200 new students for next year conservatively. 200 new students costs this district $3.1 million. That, as you can see, eats up just about all of the growth in the budget that you're allowed with the cap increase. Other considerations of the district are facilities. We have dire needs for repairs throughout the district. We have about 6 facilities that need roof address, many with outdated boiler HVAC systems. All of these are on our radar, but certainly we can't fit these all in the budget like we've tried over the last few years by doing the Performing Arts Center roof at the middle school, the Brookside roof, and so on. But as recommended by the Building Grounds Transportation Committee, we have some stopgap measures at the Monroe Township Middle School, which is over capacity currently. These stopgap measures include internal construction renovations to make an additional 10 classrooms within the existing building. These costs are estimated to be $2.2 million. And included in these costs are design costs for doing the instructional roof also at the Monroe Township Middle School for $200,000. Now, the beauty of doing this now is the state has offered a ROD grant, regular operating district grant, whereas districts like Monroe, regardless of affluence or perceived affluence, can receive a 40% rebate on our costs. That's almost $900,000 we'll get back from the state on this project. So the district obligation would be $1,500,000. To have that cost put in and incorporated in a school district budget with the cap considerations that we have is very aggressive. But the cost of not doing it and including it in the budget and forgiving the state's offer on the money could even be more so. To rent 14 additional classroom portable units with toilet rooms and health rooms and utilities would cost annually $462,000. If you do the division, you could see that renting these classroom units equals the amount of the renovations in only 3 years. It's an incredible waste of money.
As our student enrollment has been growing, so has our special ed population. Unfortunately, each year we've received a request to add support to our special ed department, and that has not come to fruition in our budgets. Consequently, our current child study team members are overworked, their workloads are tremendous, and it is beginning to become an inefficient way to operate a district of this size with students with the kinds of needs that they have. In fact, I suspect that if we continue to kick the can down the road and not provide the support that our special ed department needs, it will manifest itself in increasing the number of children who are falling through the cracks, not being addressed appropriately through case management, and or potential to increase the number of students who may ultimately be placed out of district, which costs more money because of ineffective case management. So our recommendation is that we strongly consider adding another team to our district to support those students with special needs.
Another budget consideration is the matter pertaining to the Jamesburg Board of Education, and I'm going to limit this discussion to say that we are including in our budget again in 14-15, as we did in 13-14, what the district in Monroe calculates to be the tuition rate, including passing to Jamesburg a cost of the bond interest on this school annually. Hardships exist with that, partially which have been created by the state, and that's yet to be resolved. But that could be a potential unrecognition of money in the 13-14 and 14-15 budget year if that money is not recognized and this matter not concluded. Another very important budget consideration is negotiations forthcoming. We have negotiations with the Monroe Township Education Association and the Monroe Township School Administrators Association lined up. This will be an additional assumed significant cost to be contained within the 14-15 budget. But nothing is more organizationally important, impacting student success and achievement, than the retention of our existing quality teachers and administrators, and attracting the very best new talent. And this will have to be a financial consideration within the preparation of the 14-15 budget. And some additional budget considerations relate to transportation. The state is mandating that we retire 2 54-passenger buses and 2 54-passenger vans because of age. That cost to replace them will be $324,000. Additionally, Transportation Director and Dr. Hamilton and I are recommending some other fleet replacements for safety and enrollment growth reasons. We have 2 54-passenger buses with early 2000 model year and 3 24-passenger vans with early 2000 model year in excess of 200,000 miles with enough rust that you could fit a hand in certain sections. To replace those vehicles would cost an additional $387,000, and its administration's recommendation to budget for the $711,000 for all the vehicles. So the total state mandated and student growth responsive additions considered within this presentation exceed the cap growth by approximately $4 million, which will mandate that administration create new efficiencies, seek community partnerships, and evaluate existing programs and services with a special cost-benefit consideration. To conclude, it is in Dr. Hamilton and my recommendation to dedicate $2.5 million of the remaining bond surplus, which is the lion's share of what's left, towards tax relief, directly reducing the tax levy. To create as a budget priority the construction projects at the Monroe Township Middle School, stopgap measures and design costs. To continue to service special education with expansion of child study teams. And to stay within the very constrictive state budget cap and not consider going above the cap with an election.
Okay. Thank you. So before, I just want to ask a question. If it's assumed that the additional students will take us to the cap, and all this other information that you would like to put into the budget exceeds $4 million, and we have no other sources of income from the state, we would have to cut our budget $4 million in order to include these pieces in this.
Exactly. Based on the projected student enrollment and the limitations of the cap, we would be obligated to identify approximately $4 million in our budget that, through efficiencies, reductions, et cetera, that would bring us down to cap.
And our budget, I believe, Mike, is like 85, 86% fixed, where you can't remove certain pieces from that, or?
That's correct. Fixed in the context that we have contractual obligations or state mandates driving those costs.
Okay. Questions from the board? Amy?
Well, Madam Board President, at this time, I would like to make a motion. I move that the members of the Monroe Board of Education accept the administration's recommendations as dedicating $2.5 million of bond surplus to tax relief, the construction projects, continuing to service special education with expansion of the child study team, and staying within the constructive state budget cap for the 14-15 fiscal year.
Second by Mr. Masters. Okay, comments and questions? Mr. Tesler?
Probably don't have an answer to this yet, but how are you going to cut $4 million and still maintain our programs and services? Or that's going to be a challenge.
That's the way we'll be spending our weekends for the next few weeks.
All of us?
We could do that every Friday and Saturday.
We'll be looking at, the co-curricular and extracurricular activities, some of the sections that we're currently operating. The district has a long-standing history of providing students with their first choice when they select courses for the high school. That may not be a luxury we can continue to afford. So we'll be looking at those kinds of things.
Are there any opportunities, I know it's here too, for us to make more income? I know you talked about it. I think that's one thing we should continue to look at, other ways to make more money. Like now we're profitable in the MECA program and other things like that.
Things we would have to look at?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's keep on looking.
Anyone else? Mr. Kaufman?
Just real quick, I don't know whether or not Reggie has left the building or not, but one of the things, to talk to Ira's point, when we were originally designing the high school, one of the things that we had talked about back in the day was to be able to provide for the ability to produce or offer technology services to other parts of the community to hopefully bring some of that, enterprise fund related material. We consciously decided to have a fairly sophisticated data center built here, which was far and above what we had at the old high school. So I think we need to re-engage those conversations in both curriculum and finance committees to see what opportunities might be out there. I know in some of the other committees that we have met with, including our curriculum, we've been looking at providing services to the community for things like producing big signage and other types of materials, producing plaques, which all of the stuff we can do in-house. These are also great opportunities. I know we have a lot of PTOs that look for companies to do a lot of this work. We could bring that work in-house. We can, again, develop enterprise funds so that the money that our PTOs are spending to go to outside organizations can be literally used right back here at the school. And I think a few weeks ago we even spoke about offering catering services here at the high school. When we have our Teacher of the Year dinners at the end of the year, they're fabulously run, and we have an incredible facility here with 2 professional grade kitchens for our curriculum students who are looking for culinary arts. So we have an incredible capacity here at this building to be able to do a lot of these things for the community. We just need to hear from the community members on the types of services or the types of needs that would best suit your groups or organizations over and above, just renting out or giving access to the auditoriums and stuff like that. So we would always welcome, coming to Mike and talking to the administration on what we can do for the community as well.
Mr. Prezioso, did you have a comment? No, I thought you had your hand up.
Okay, about the motion. What is this motion for?
It's to accept the recommendations, the administration's recommendations that are on the last page of your handout, of the presentation.
Is this just a consideration, or are we voting on a budget?
We're not voting on the budget. We're voting on the philosophy that we would keep these things in the budget.
Just the philosophy, then? There's a discussion coming on here.
This is not the budget.
Okay, because I was a little curious that if we're going to evaluate the curriculum and the athletic programs, maybe we should have that before we make a decision. But if it's just a philosophy, that's fine.
Right. Because one of our goals for this year is to have Dr. Hamilton look at the co-curricular activities and the sports programs, but we can't vote on that today because that goal has not been completed. So the philosophy is just to look at these pieces. Mr. Chiarella.
So but the motion is to ensure that the $2.5 million left over from the bond referendum goes back to the taxpayers.
Mike? Mr. Gorski?
That's correct as a budget philosophy concept. Obviously, we still have to have a preliminary budget hearing where the public has to come and participate and be heard in the budget process. And there's going to be numerous deliberations at the principal and school levels with the defense rounds. And we don't know what our state aid's going to be. We still don't have into focus what the ratables are. There's a lot yet to be considered, but this is just as a general philosophy, considering all of the responsibilities that we're facing coming up in the next year, how the board should generally address it.
And I do appreciate that, and I appreciate everything that everyone's done, including the board members here on the retreat and everything else to come up with this philosophy. But I think the important thing to remember is, and I know that it's going to put a burden on us and on the administration to come up with this stuff, but there has to be a clear recognition, I think, that times are tough, that this money exists, and that tax abatement is probably the best way to go at this point with this, because we need to recognize that this is the public's money. This is not ours, and I think that it's also a good faith effort too to show the public that we understand what's going on, and we have to do something about it also.
Mr. Masters?
It's easy to support. I mean, just to summarize, we're going to give money back to hopefully, give money back to the taxpayers. We're going to expand the middle school, which we've already decided we're going to do because it's pretty crowded, right? And we're going to help out the special education, which 3 things we all want to do. So that's why I was so quick to jump on it. I have no problem supporting this.
And stay within the cap. So we
And
want
stay
to
within
make
the
sure that we're not going to go over the cap this year.
Madam, may I
Mr.
one
Gorski?
comment? One of the most important factors that we mentioned is the enrollment growth. It would be possible to put forth a budget that's flat with perhaps a no tax increase. If you didn't have to service 200 additional students every year, or almost a small school every 2 years, that puts an incredible financial demand on this district, and I just want to emphasize that again.
Anyone else? Mr. Point?
Just a question. Under the administration's recommendations on the last slide, or the last page of what I'm looking at, it doesn't include the transportation issues, the buses and the vans. Is that not part of the recommendations, or is that simply something that has to happen?
Madam?
Sure.
Well, certainly 2 of them, the buses and the vans that are being mandated by the state to be replaced is mandated, so we don't have a choice in that matter. But the board should also include in the philosophy the replacement of the 2 extra vans with the early 2000 model year, and also the 3 vans from that same time period, if they would be so considerate.
And as we flush this out, we may need to amend that based on how we identify other efficiencies, because keep in mind there's $4 million that we have to identify in order to comply with the 2% cap.
I think I know the answer to this, but I still want to ask. Because the transportation is such a big item and these buses have to be replaced from time to time, I'm assuming that quite a bit of thought and analysis goes into the development of the transportation routes so that we maximize the number of students on the buses and therefore minimize the number of buses that we need?
That's absolutely correct. We have a very sophisticated routing software called Versatrans. And for about the month preceding the start of school, once we have some better enrollment information, all the routes are designed with careful consideration of timing to make sure students get picked up and dropped off at school on time, delivered home in a reasonable hour. You don't want a kindergartner on the bus for more than 45 minutes. But yet to still maintain an efficiency with the routing so that we're not having a bus with 2 students run throughout town and sit in the park idle for the rest of the day. Our transportation department, as you know, has the highest transportation efficiency rating in the state. Of course, that requires some human manipulation once we recognize some routes are running a little late and so on.
Anyone else? Ms. Antelis?
Madam, I failed to mention also, to create efficiencies, we also, through our transportation director, solicit jointures with neighboring school districts whose routing software may have routes that go through some of ours so that we could share costs. And right now we have over a dozen contract jointures with other school districts, sharing routes, sharing costs.
Ms. Antelis?
Yeah, I just wanted to, actually, Dr. Hamilton, you said it. I think the reason that the transportation, some other things didn't go in here is because we don't always know if we can do it. The 2 extra buses are really just to bring us back to full in-house buses and get rid of this outside contracting, which has been a problem. I think the reason that we went with, that the administration went with these 4 are they're really big items, and they were big items for the public to hear that we are going to make the commitment to dedicate the $2.5 million to let the parents know that we're going to address the issue of overcrowding in the school. Again, the special services has been, so these are big, I think, ticket items, and that's why really a starting point that we want.
And we haven't talked about negotiations, other than that is something that we are looking to do this year. Their contracts are up, and we don't know how that will affect the budget. And Mr. Tesler?
Just a thought that popped in my head. Do they make school buses run on natural gas? And would it be, if they do, would it be cheaper in the long run to purchase buses to reduce fuel costs?
I'll be happy to look into that, but I'm unaware of any school districts with buses running on natural gas, but it could certainly be a clean, cheaper alternative. We'll look into it.
Because you see the regular buses, said runs on natural gas. So I was just curious.
Anyone else? Mr. Poy?
Well, I do know what the philosophy of the board has been, and I know what many parents are requesting, but as push comes to shove, I would be interested in knowing if we contracted out the transportation, as many districts have done, and I know, that's a whole ball of wax, and that's a very controversial thing, but it would be interesting to know what the savings might be if we contracted it out, that service, since many other districts have done that. And I know they've done that with a little bit of angst, but some of those districts have continued to contract out their bus service. And I'm just simply saying, I don't think that should be totally off the table, not necessarily for next year, but in the future, if it gets harder and harder to find the revenues to actually run the instructional program, then I think we have to look at other ways to cut costs.
Ms. Antelis?
I want to address that. Being here for 20 years, at one time that was the philosophy of the board. Contract everything out, let's save all this money. And we did the first year, the second year. And then the third year, it started going up. And then it started going up again. And also there's safety issues. We've had issues with, we know that we're fingerprinting our bus drivers. We have cameras in our buses. Every bus has a radio that is connected not just to the school district, but to the police department. Okay, so if there's an emergency, just like that, they're calling them. And I think that that's the reason that this board went over, so it's not a cost saving. It's safety, and they'll always come back, because once a bus company knows you got rid of your whole fleet, that's when the prices start going up.
Mr. Masters?
I was going to say, that's probably the reason you see them sticking with it, because once you have no more fleet, that's a huge capital expenditure to start bringing all that back. You have no more employees, now you got to hire all those employee bus drivers again, and you're kind of stuck. What you were saying before, Dr. Hamlin, about the additional, when you said modifications, you mean down, right, not up? Of those extra ones?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yeah, just one more point to add on to what Amy said, being on the board for a few years. I could tell you that I've had personal discussion with board members of other districts who have gone that route to save some shekels in the beginning to try and cut cost, and 100% of the cases, every one of them said, whatever you do, do not give up control of your bus fleet for the reasons that were stated before. Once you do that and you cross that bridge, you have to blow it up behind you, because you could never afford to buy all that fleet back and undo for a couple of $100,000 savings over time, considering where we are today with cameras that are in the buses that have saved us litigation issues, which that's a lot of money. Litigation issues are a lot of money. So there are a lot of unseen soft costs that come along with outsourcing stuff like this, which is why I know in the past we've looked at it and we would have to give up too much in this community. And I have to tell you, we move, 6,000 students, how many students?
5,111.
Twice a day, 5 days a week for the whole school year. Knock on wood, great job. Never want to outsource it, ever.
Correction, 6,111.
We just added a couple new buses. Mr. Gorski, I know that we've been going in the direction of shared services, and I'm sure that we'll be looking at more shared services. Could you give us an idea what we have shared services agreements with besides the transportation?
Yes. All the shared service agreements are disclosed in the budget statement. And just off the top of my head, I know we have shared service agreements with the township for the video channel. We have shared service agreements with numerous other school districts to share jointures and to reduce route costs. We have shared service agreements with the Middlesex Regional Ed Service Commission, whereas our food service director provides meals to the Academy Learning Center at a profit through our cafeteria fund.
Purchasing consortium.
Purchasing consortium through the Middlesex Regional Ed Service Commission, which we just disclosed to the board in a recent substantiated letter from the organization, that has had cumulative savings of a little over $700,000 in the year and a half that we've been engaged in the consortium. And there's many more, and we're always looking for new.
Thank you. Anyone else from Mr. Prezioso?
Michael, when will we find out about the general fund tax levy, the amounts?
Well, the budget guidelines will be released in the early January timeframe, and you'll have to look at the entire budget revenues in a whole and get the state software to determine how much of a tax levy you're going to need and what that exact number is. That'll be disclosed to the Finance Committee at the preliminary budget hearing and also at the final budget adoption meeting.
We're going to vote on going to cap before that, though, correct?
Yeah, and what's important is the cap figure that's represented here in this PowerPoint slide is based upon last year's guidelines, and it's really projected. It's subject to change with state guidelines and new budget law.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we will have a roll call on the motion to accept the administrator's recommendations as a budget philosophy.
Ms. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella? Yes. Mr. Zarneski?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Poi?
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso?
Yes.
Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes.
Madam Board President, motion unanimously passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms.
And,
Koloponowicz, before you go to the public forum, I just want to point out one of our policies about public participation at board meetings Item number 4 is all statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No participant may address or question board members individually. At our last board meeting, a member of the public did stand up and try to poll board members about their votes, and so I just ask that if that should happen again, please, reference back to this policy.
Thank you, Ms. Santos. Okay, at this time, we will go to the public forum, and anyone from the public wishing to speak to the agenda, please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. You're speaking to the agenda.
I just wanted to thank you, Dr. Hamilton, Dr. Gorman, on the excellent...
Please leave your name and address.
I apologize. Karen Castaldo, I'm the MTEA president for Monroe Township, and I live in Jackson. Do you need that for Cypress Point Lane? I want to personally thank Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Gorman for the excellent presentation, and Mike Gorski. And on behalf of our soccer team, Coach McKenzie, Coach Ross, and Coach Giannoni, if I got that correct, for their support with those fabulous student role models. It takes all of us to educate the whole child, not just one excellent math teacher or not just one excellent, language arts teacher. So if you could kindly, Dr. Hamilton, send an email blast out with that wonderful presentation along with some balloons, et cetera, I know our staff would appreciate it very much because they don't know just how good they are. And I think that would also help. So thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate the good job that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Anyone else from the public?
Schneider, 8 Regal Court in Monroe. On page 10, it says it's recommended that the board approve the attached list of requests for field trips. Can you tell me what the most expensive field trip is going to be?
Dr. Hamilton, do you have, we'll look that information up?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we will be looking that information up.
Does that go against my 3 minutes? Because I have another question.
No, the clock's done.
Okay.
Do you have another question while he's looking that information up?
Yes, page 12. Pertaining to the yoga class, that's in addition to the regular phys ed that they get? I know it's only $600, but why an additional cost?
What page is that? I'm sorry, Mrs. Schneider.
Page 12.
Page 12, Madam.
Mr. Gorski?
Okay, good.
Number 2 on page 12, it is recommended that members of the Board of Education approve Mary Flynn of Peaceful Pathways, LLC, to give yoga classes to special education students at the high school at a fee of $150 per 90-minute class. That's part of the special education curriculum. Obviously, this yoga is a therapeutic value to these students, and it would be an additional cost to their per-pupil expenditure.
Okay, and also on page 12, could you please explain what the employee assistance program plan is for almost $25,000?
Yes. The Employee Assistance Plan was started many years ago with when Dennis Ventrillo was the affirmative action officer at the time, an assistant to the superintendent. And the program allows 24/7, 365 days access for staff to call a counselor and get a referral for perhaps psychological counseling or psychological services. Previously, there's been instances where administration has had, I'll give you an example, 2 employees with some kind of conflict. And as a preventative prophylactic measure, administration sent these 2 students, two staff members, and required them to call the employee assistance plan. They spoke to counselors for psychological dispute resolution, and what that does is save on litigation costs, because if not, these events can get quite costly. It also helps staff health to deal with stress, family issues, drug dependence. All of these are reported quarterly from the organization as they service our staff. And it also has a benefit on our regular insurance rates to offer these services.
I was going to ask you, isn't any of this covered by the health insurance that they already have?
No, most of these services are in addition to the Horizon Health Benefit services that they receive.
Okay.
And these are an important administrative tool often to help employees who are in obviously bad times and emotionally or through drug dependence and so on, and have them speak to appropriate medical professionals and get help.
Okay.
24/7 when we may not be in session and so on.
Okay.
We're going to continue to look, and I'll just share that answer with you if you
Okay.
don't mind.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
Hi, Robert Zaglarski, Z as in zebra, E-G-L-A-R-S-K-I, 162 Tournament Drive. My remarks tonight directly relate to your discussion of budget development philosophy. Tonight I'd like to talk to you about an idea that I have which would help alleviate, in my estimation, some of the financial burden of the influx of new students coming from new housing developments and also help taxpayers. Mayor and council will receive the benefit, as it has done in the past, of sewer connection fees associated with these developments. Over the past 6 years, the mayor and council have used millions of dollars of Monroe Township Utilities Department surplus to help fund the municipal budget. Township Business Administrator Wayne Hamilton and Council President Gerald Tambura have both stated that the surplus accrued in the Utilities Department is the result of sewer connection fees paid by developers, and I believe them. Developers pay for water and sewer lines and the sewer connection fees. Once these fees build up as utility surplus, the township uses the money to help fund the municipal operation, and only the municipal operation. The school district, as you well know, gets nothing. Even though it must eventually build new schools or classrooms, as you've just discussed, to house additional students generated by these same developments. Therefore, I propose that the Board of Education be allowed to share with Mayor and Council, and I know it's not your call, the surplus accumulated by these fees for two very specific purposes. One, funding capital projects necessary to accommodate new students resulting from new housing developments, and paying a portion of the school district property tax associated with debt service. I believe it is reasonable and fair, as well as fiscally responsible, to give the board access to at least some of those millions of dollars for the very limited purposes I mentioned. As a former school business administrator and mayor familiar with public budgets and public law, I'm sure this proposal could be implemented. It may, of course, take a little bit of doing, but it can be done. Just beware of those who say it can't be done, especially those who wish to maintain the status quo of dipping into a sewer and water utility budget to help fund municipal operations. It is time for Mayor and Council to reduce its heavy reliance on the water and sewer utility department surplus and share some of it with school district budget.
Thank you for your comments.
To keep school district property taxes from raising excessively.
Thank you very much.
Our schools deserve their fair share, and so do our taxpayers. Thank you.
While our next speaker is approaching the mic, Mrs. Snyder, the most expensive trip on the field trip list is $831.92.
Mike Bono. I'm just a
Address,
little
please?
confused.
May we have your address?
What?
May we have your address?
Oh, 38 Crenshaw Court, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm a little confused. Tomorrow night, there's a meeting of the planning board, which is an extension of last month's meeting of the planning board. Now, at Mountain Mills and 613, they're building townhouses, condos, whatever. And there's 500 families moving in, 400 affordable, 100 low income. On Perineville and 33, the proposal for tomorrow night is 750 condos, houses, or whatever to go up. Now, if everybody in these houses has one child, that's 1,250 kids coming into the system. If half of them have one child, there's 600 kids coming into the system. Now, based on the 200, if you're talking of $3 million, with that theoretical figure, you're up in the $9 million range. Now, when we ask them, how is this going to impact the school system on 613 and Mount Mills, they said 500 houses, 94 kids. Now, how they came up with this magic number of 94 kids out of 500 houses, my question is, if this really happens, and if there is a half a kid per house, or half of them don't have kids, and we are talking about 600 kids, besides the fact that this goes to $9 million, assuming that the transportation department is using the buses now to their fullest and their maximum, they can't put another kid on the bus. So now you got 600 kids who need transportation to the school. You're looking at approximately 50 kids per bus. You're looking at 12 buses. You're looking at approximately $100,000 a bus. You're looking at $1.2 million in addition to the $9 million. You're looking at over $10 million, not $3 million. Now, where this magic number of 200 came from, I don't know. But they are going to, and I'm sure that Prineville and 33 is going to be approved like the other one was. Now, think about this, guys. Somebody, someplace, has got to yell uncle. Because if they keep building the way they're building, people have a nasty habit of having children. And if you're going to have them, you got to put them someplace. And where are you going to put them? In the school. And how are we going to house them? And how are we going to pay for them? So I think the board should consider this. And maybe you guys come to planning board and say, take it easy, guys. We don't have the room, the buses, or the budget for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert Roach, 18 Muirfield Boulevard. I just want to piggyback a little bit on what Bob Sklarski said before I get into what I really wanted to talk about. The township has used in the last 4 years $40 million from the Municipal Utility Authority surplus. And if we got a portion of that, that would certainly go a long way to reducing the taxpayers' burden on the budget. And it's interesting when you look at the township's budget. They used most of the water utility when there was election year, and they really used very little and had high taxes in non-election years. So I mean, it's a game they're playing, and I think you guys ought to think about how you can maybe get a share of that utility authority surplus. And there's more construction in the town. There's going to be more connection fees. The thing that one of the questions I had is on the projected schedule of CAP use of budget. It says 2013-14. I may have missed it, but is this just last year's CAP computation, or is this projected for 14-15?
Mr. Gorski?
It's a projection of CAP specifically for 14-15, which is based upon the levy and a lot of factors from 13-14.
All right. But one of the factors in here, as enrollment increase is an exception to the cap, as you well know, and just go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
I have no comment. Go ahead.
It's an exception to the cap. And your schedule here that shows budget considerations, increase enrollment of 200 children at the 15.5, we all know that the actual cost increase is not your average cost per pupil because of overheads and things of that nature that don't change when you have a new student come in. So it's substantially less. So I think you're giving some misinformation by using the average cost for the pupil. That's my two comments.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to respond?
No.
Okay, thank you very much.
Do you want a response, Mr. Roche?
Only if you want to.
All right. The enrollment that we used here was just a 3-year trend line. And if you looked at the ASSA data from the last 3 years, on average, it's gone up about 200 a year. So using round numbers, we're estimating 200 additional, and that's a conservative number, I realize that, but I think it's reasonable. The $800,000, just as a point of clarification, is an automatic adjustment to the cap. The state recognizes that you have some cap wiggle room, and you should be afforded some if you have increasing enrollment. I'm estimating conservatively that we'll have $3.1 million of additional costs associated with those 200 students. The state gives you an adjustment for about $800,000. And to your point about the calculation and the projection of that number, keep in mind it is an average. You might have overhead enough to absorb 200 kids in 1 year, but over time that average is going to catch up with you. And just by its very definition, that average is based over time, and that's a realistic number.
Yeah, but it may not be a realistic number for 1 year.
Fair comment.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
Stephen Ryback, 23 Riviera Drive. Mr. Gorski, your report on the facilities was certainly right on target and highlights a problem that we're really having here in our town. I'm going to follow up on some of the comments that Mr. Bono, who preceded me, just spoke about. You know, we're being underfunded grossly in state aid, and we need that money to provide the kind of education we all want for our students here. But there's another part of this fight, and that's the amount of construction, high-density construction, that's coming into our township. Tomorrow night, the planning board is meeting to decide whether to grant preliminary, I can't say that word for the life of me, approval to a development on Route 33 and Prineville Road. That development is slated to have 749 units. 575 three-bedroom units, 144 two-bedroom units. The developer says that will only generate 237 students. You do the math. You'll get almost 1,300 from just that one development when it's finished. So your job, as I see it, is going to be not concentrating on education, but where are we going to put these kids? And I think that we need to draw a line someplace, and I think we need to join forces, and this goes for everyone sitting in the audience as well. We need to go down to that planning board meeting tomorrow, and we need to explain to this planning board that what they're really doing is robbing our schools of providing the kind of education that we want for our students, as well as robbing the taxpayers because we can't afford this any longer. Thank you, and I hope that people will come down, and I would love to see a representation from this board there tomorrow night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Arminio, 9 Nathaniel Street, and I'm candidate for the Board of Education. The ROD grant, is that a grant that's readily available? Do we have to apply for it, and can we be denied?
Mr. Gorski?
Yes, the grant is readily available. Yes, we've applied for it. And it's highly unlikely that this particular one that I referenced at the middle school will be denied. I think from all the ROD grants that Mr. Masters outlined at the last meeting, I think we may only have one that's in jeopardy, and that's perhaps the tennis courts, because we were given guidance that synthetic fields and tennis courts are not eligible for ROD grants. However, as Dr. Hamilton argued, our tennis program is intricately involved in our curriculum, and therefore we've asked for an exception.
Okay, so we think that we're gonna, it's likely, but it is possible that we don't qualify for some reason.
All the guidance that we have is this one in the middle school presentation is most highly probable that it'll be approved.
Okay, and what are the, you had some of the ages of the buses. What are the ages of the 2 buses that you said were mandatory to be replaced?
The ones that
There were two on.
Yeah, they preceded 2001, and I don't have the exact model year with me, but I went over the schedule with our transportation director, and they've aged out at the end of this year. They have to go.
At what year? Is it 13 or 12?
15.
It is now 15. Okay,
Yes.
that's what I understood, that there was an uptick from what, 12 to 15?
Yes.
So they
Yes,
are, okay,
15.
so we're aware of that.
Yes.
Okay. I would also, I was at the township last night at the zoning board, so I can assure you that they granted approvals for 150 townhouses in the 33 area with 3 bedrooms each. So that's another 150 that are already on the books. They're townhouses. We're starting to get high-density development in this town. It's time for everybody. We talk about shared services with the township. We talk about shared services with other communities. It's time we share our concerns together as a whole community, not just the Board of Education, separate from the township. I know you're all elected officials, and it's our mandated responsibility to educate our children. But part of that, I think, is to learn how to try to get everybody to understand and be informed of what's going on in the whole community so we can serve the children in the best way, and that might be just to try to curtail or at least show our concern about what kind of development is going on in the town. And I think it's part of our responsibility as board members. I'd also like to thank everyone who has done a great job, all the good teachers that we have in this community, about the job that they've done with our students, and congratulations to the soccer fellas that did such a good job. And I failed the last meeting to congratulate those lovely vocal chorus that was here. And I think, you know, sports and music and all those things are very essential. So I appreciate everyone that works. But I also would like to say that I think the job of concerned citizens also should be recognized, and there's been a lot more participation in the last few years by the public. There are people coming here, getting themselves informed, and I think that's helping the board make decisions and push the board into being more responsible. So I think we should all, again, as a community, congratulate ourselves as to public participation and encouraging our board members and elected officials in transparency and responsibility, because it's not a closed system. It's an open system, and we should all be heard, we should all be considered, and I congratulate the people behind me who have been coming on a regular basis, or people for the first time, and being concerned about their community, because we're going to need everybody, all hands on deck, to make this community sustainable. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Tom Notstein, 15 Nathaniel Street. Just a quick question to clarify. On one page, you show the bond surplus is 2.9 million, and you're dedicating 2.5 for the tax relief. Does that mean that there's still 400,000 left, or is that are we just rounding?
We have approximately $2.9 million as of today. As of an action of tonight, that could reduce it by 113,000. So that's approximately 2.8 million remaining. It's Dr. Hamilton and my recommendation to appropriate 2.5 million for tax relief. That would leave now 300,000 for any unforeseen circumstances that could arise with still a relatively new school, or any claims that could be brought against it, or even any enrollment increases that could require capital furnishing of the school during that time. There's nothing planned in that regard. And another important factor is the graduation out of the stimulus of applying the bond money. If you were to throw all that remaining bond money years ago at the tax levy, you would have had a really nice reduction in taxes that 1 year. But the subsequent year, you would have had a massive spike. The way we've designed this intentionally is to wean it off, and it's correlating with an increase in ratables, which should absorb the stimulus going away on the tax levy and the taxpayers.
What's left in the bond surplus, so that can only be used for the high school, is that accurate?
That is 100% accurate. It has to be used in accordance with the project that the voters approved.
And then basically, I guess the intent, if that's not used, in how long, when will that go back into general fund?
6 years from the sale of the bonds, unless if there's any contingencies requiring it to be left open longer.
Excellent, thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak to the agenda? Please come on.
Marion Lester, 44 Avenue I. At the finance meeting, you said you saved $1.7 million on the opt-out insurance. So I was wondering if you have a minimum projection of the new union contract cost?
We're not allowed to speak about negotiations.
But you don't have a minimum of what that new contract would cost?
We are not allowed to talk about negotiations.
Okay. And they were talking also about the planning board meeting last night. How many people can we count on showing up so that you can make this presentation to the planning board and the developers?
Tomorrow evening?
Mm-hmm. Because they give us their projection of what student costs are, and I think a presentation like this would be quite weighty for the developers. I see Mr. Prezioso there sometimes, Mr. Poi, but I don't see it as a whole group.
I have no comment.
No?
No.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the approval of the minute. The approval of the... I'm sorry, I didn't see you coming. Is this in regard to the agenda? Okay.
Good evening. Chrissy Skirby, 8 Seminole Court. Under Board Action 2, the residency contract, I just was wondering how many children do we currently have that are not residents?
I don't know that number off the top of my head, but it's, I would say less than 10.
Okay. Do you expect it to be higher with all of the new developments? Or how long could they be under contract before they can move in, that they can come to our schools?
We have a policy which governs that, actually, and I believe it has to be within the calendar year. And if they are a senior, they get a little more time because they have the option to complete their senior year in the high school.
Oh, well, okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Then I will close the public forum and go to the approval of the minutes for our special public Board of Education meeting of August 21st, 24th, 2013. Motion and a second. Mr. Chiarella?
Second.
Second by Mr. Masters. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Mr. Kaufman, Ms. Antelis. Approval of the minutes for the Public Board of Education meeting for September 11, 2013. Mr. Chiarella.
Second.
Mr. Masters. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Everybody was here. The closed session meeting of September 11, 2013. Mr. Chiarella.
Second.
Mr. Masters. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, at this time, we'll go to committee reports. Are there any committees that need to report this evening? Okay, seeing none, we will go to the superintendent's report. Dr. Hamilton.
Okay, before I get into my report, I'd just like to share with the board, I have been invited to be a guest speaker at the Synagogue in Concordia this Sunday. I will be speaking on exploring violence in our American culture. So I could appreciate some moral support. The administrators also completed another 2 full days of training on the Coaching for Results through the Learning Forward grant. It's been a huge commitment on our time, particularly given the time of year, but the value of the training has been immeasurable, and I want to again acknowledge and thank the administrators for being so diligent and giving their time to be a part of that endeavor, which is only going to make us stronger as an administrative body. And moving on to the superintendent's report, Madam Board President and members of the board, it is recommended by the superintendent that personnel items A through O be approved by roll call vote, please.
Mr. Chiarella.
Second.
Mr. Masters. Are there any comments or questions for Dr. Hamilton? Okay, seeing none, we'll have a roll call.
Ms. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Mr. Zarneski?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Poi?
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso?
Yes.
Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes.
Madam Board President, personnel items A through O passes.
Thank you.
And moving on to board action items, Madam Board President and members of the board, it is recommended by the superintendent that board action items A through H be approved by roll call vote.
Mr. Chiarella?
Second.
Mr. Masters? Again, comments or questions for Dr. Hamilton? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call.
Ms. Antelis?
Yes, and recuse myself on item C like Charlie.
So noted, thank you. Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Mr. Zarneski?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes?
Mr. Poi?
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso?
Yes.
Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes.
Madam Board President, board action items A through H passes.
Thank you.
That concludes the superintendent's report.
Okay, and we will go to the business administrator's report. Mr. Gorski?
Madam Board President and members of the Monroe Township Board of Education, it is recommended that board action items A through F be approved by consent roll call.
Mr. Chiarella?
I'll second it.
Mr. Masters? Comments or questions for Mr. Gorski? Mr. Chiarella?
Just on number F, the food service truck award, what is that for?
We shuttle food services from where they're prepared in two hubs to the other 6 schools. And we have a very old aluminum-sided food delivery truck where the body is literally rusting off the frame and is in danger of coming off. So it was recommended to the Building Grounds Transportation Committee and Finance Committee to replace this vehicle. It will be financed through the Food Service Enterprise Fund, so it will not have any effect on taxpayers. And as part of the requirement in procuring this truck, we had to put it out to public bid, and we had one bid that fell within our budget and parameters.
Anyone else? Mr. Prezioso?
Yes, item E, Employee Assistance Program. What is that?
Employee Assistance Plan is psychological counseling service.
Didn't we go through this? Wasn't it explained?
I believe a member of the public asked that question.
Yes, and I was in the bathroom.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's a psychological counseling service that's available 24/7, 365 days a week for employee issues pertaining to spousal matters, drug addiction, stress. Could be a whole host of things that have an immediate health impact or could lead to even something as egregious as a suicide. It also helps the district in that administratively, Dr. Hamilton and I could require an employee to call and participate in this program, where otherwise they may not be eligible to. And that saves the district in legal litigation. It also saves the district money in insurance rates. And staff appreciates it also.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Then we will have a roll call.
Ms. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Mr. Zarneski?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Poi?
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso? Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes.
Madam Board President, board action items A through F passes. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Board President's report. The Board of Education has recently received a preliminary demographer's report. The report was prepared by Whitehall Associates using the cohort survival method and projects the enrollment figures out 5 years to the 2017-2018 school year. The district has to report enrollment figures to the state every year on October 15th, the ASSA data. And since the figures have not yet been reported to the state for this year, the demographer's report included the enrollment figures from October 15, 2012. It was felt that this report would not be as accurate as possible with the outdated figures, so the demographer's report will not be approved by the board until the current figures are incorporated into it after the October 15th enrollment report to the board, to the state. After the report is approved by the board, the ad hoc committee on growth and facilities will be reconvened to continue their work on looking at the long-range facilities plan, our current school population, and how we will make sure that every student coming into our district in the next few years will have a seat in a classroom. The ad hoc committee has already recommended doing a demographer's report, which we have done, and renovating Monroe Township Middle School to add much-needed classrooms to that school, which we talked about before with our budget philosophy. I'm asking any member of the public who would like to be a part of this important committee to contact the board office with your name and phone number so that you will be contacted when the committee gets back together. The purpose of this committee is to give the community the opportunity to voice their opinion as to the direction the district will go in meeting the facility needs of all our students, which we know will continue to grow for at least the next few years, probably longer. So I urge you to join the ad hoc committee and help make that decision. So that concludes the board president's report. And we will go to other Board of Education business. Mr. Chiarella.
Yes, I just have a couple things. This weekend, on September 28th, the Historic Preservation Commission is going to be hosting a old-time baseball game at the Dye Farm, and that's open to the public and it's free. And it's an 1800s era game. There are two games, but the first game is at noon, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a good way to see how baseball used to be played. So I would ask that, if there are any students, baseball players, or just people that are interested in seeing it to come out. We always have a good time. And then the other thing is on October 5th, the Environmental Commission is going to host a green fair at Oak Tree, and that starts at 10 a.m. So that's another, I think, another good program that it's good to take part in, and great for our students.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Antelis?
Sorry.
Thank you. I'd like to go back to a comment or a statement that Mr. Poi made at the last board meeting about filming the candidates. And when you first suggested it, well, it's really the candidates' jobs to get their names out there, and it's really up to the public to inform themselves about the voters, about the candidates. But unfortunately, as we saw in the numbers last year and moving the election to November, I think people are confused. I think a lot of people went into the voting booth and really didn't know what was going on. So today I called New Jersey School Boards. I spoke to Gwen Thornton and asked her, because it would involve board money, about filming a candidates night. And she told me that boards all over this state do it. And the way they do it is it's run by the League of Women Voters. There is no endorsing of any candidate. It's informational only. And I think it's a good idea with 13 candidates that people have the knowledge of what they're voting for when they go to the booth. And just the fact that there is a Board of Education election in November. So I would hope that, and I believe I asked Ira if the League of Women Voters they are doing one.
I believe it's the 13th.
The 13th, and I really...
The 23rd.
Oh, the 23rd.
I'm sorry, I got my numbers wrong.
Sorry, the 23rd. And
23rd.
I think it's a good idea, really, to film it and put it on Channel 28 and inform the voters, let them see, even if you don't put on the part where people are asking questions, let them read their statements about what they're all about and let the voters be informed about 13 candidates. So I hope that, we'll consider that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Kaufman?
Sure. A couple of months ago, when I believe Mr. Chiarella and Mr. Masters came to the board and reported on the new developments that were going up on Mounts Mills and on 33, it was noted that there was going to be some type of focus group or committee set up of which a board member of the Board of Education was going to sit on, and they were going to talk about, how they're possibly coming up with these numbers and whatever happened with that.
Mr. Poi is sitting on that committee.
Okay, so what happened in those meetings? I'd never heard anything.
I did report on it at one of the board meetings because they've only had one meeting.
One meeting.
They had one meeting, and I reported on essentially that because the developer for the Mount Mills project was the same developer for the Route 33 project, the planning board was going to request that the developer pay for an independent demographer study. And that would be paid for by that developer. And that would then be a second set of data for them to compare to what the developer presented in their report. They did send out requests to 3 demographers. I have not been updated on essentially what has come of that yet. I do know, though, that the developer said that they would not pay for the second study, the second project. So I did ask when we were going to meet again, and they said essentially tomorrow night, which is the planning board meeting. So I'm a little bit confused, but that's where that stands. They are aware. I sent emails to some of those members, and I said it's not just the number of kids coming into the township from these new communities, but it's also the need for the space for those kids. And so all the members of that subcommittee, they're quite aware that it's not simply the daily cost of educating the students that they need to be concerned about, but also the space needs for those students. But that's essentially where that stands presently.
So let me just, because it's late and I may have gotten a little foggy. So I'm clear that when the first meeting came up, a demographer that was paid by the developer came and reported to the planning board that there were going to be X number of units and X number of kids. Then we had this meeting that you attended, and it was mandated that the builder they would be the client and pay for another independent demographer's report and basically have to pass those findings back to the same group. And that's what they said they would not pay for?
They said they would pay for the project on Mount Mills, for that study to be done.
Only the one project, not both?
Not both projects, that's right.
And we don't know if the second study was ever done, or?
The developers, in making the application for approval of that project, they have to submit an impact study. And the impact study is the impact on the roads, the impact on the municipality in terms of sewer, water, what have you, and the impact on the schools. But they deal with the impact on the schools strictly in terms of the number of students. And that is in the original application for the Route 33 project. It is a relatively, and I don't recall it because I haven't looked at it lately, it's a relatively low number of students for the number of units that are there. And for that same reason, for the relatively low number of students at the Mount Mills project, that's why the planning board said, we're not so confident in this data that you've given us. That's what they said to the developer. And that's why we now want our own study to be done. And they did request that the developer pay for it, and he agreed to pay for it for the Mount Mills project. But then when he got hit with also paying for it for the Route 33 project, the developer says, no, we won't pay for that one.
You can't make it up. That's the only thing I can say. You just literally can't make it up. I know it was brought up in one of the other board meetings. I'm pretty sure that neither development are marketing one-bedroom units. I'm pretty sure none of them are. So unless society has changed recently, that they're going to be 2- and 3-bedroom units, husband in one room, wife in the other, and in the case of a 3-bedroom unit, you're going to have husband in one room, wife in the other unit, and maybe a pet room for the third room. Sorry. I just don't, the math doesn't work, and I'm not a demographer. Somebody help me. I'm just not clear on how this works.
Well, if you watch HGTV, the third bedroom is always the office.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, and I watch a
But
lot
I'm
of
sorry,
HGTV.
weren't some of this supposed to be low income?
They are.
Yes.
Okay, so are we talking about low income, work at home people?
I think some of them are also set aside for senior citizens, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. It's quite a mixture of housing. It really is. And it's also included in both of those projects, though, is a commercial space as well.
What time is this meeting? 7?
7 o'clock, I believe, at the municipal building. Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, this is on something else because Ms. Lordy is here. I believe she was going to research this thing about the videotaping of the candidates if they got together and it was some kind of a neutral grounds. I'd appreciate her sharing with us whatever she can.
We did have a conversation about this at the last meeting, and I did indicate that I would look into it. Actually, Mrs. Antelis hits the button right on the head, so to speak, to mix my metaphors. The reality is, if an outside entity such as the highly respected League of Women Voters, who has done this, frankly, all over the country at every level, that would be the entity that would rent the facility for purposes of undertaking the debate, and that would be the better way to go. And not particularly specifically only with that entity, whatever the appropriate entity is that seeks to undertake the debate or oversee or coordinate the debate, and have that facility fill out the appropriate paperwork and pay the appropriate fee for using board facilities.
Anyone else? Mr. Masters?
Excuse me, to follow up to what Lou said before, and what Mr. Poy said, I was at that Mounts Mills meeting when they got that 70, 85 students, and when they were pushed on it, the answer is it's proprietary. They build it themselves, and they compute it themselves. One of the things we hit on the head is the home office, which they seem to use a lot. So if you have 2 bedrooms upstairs and a home office that just happens to have the exact same layout as your other bedrooms, it's not calculated in. So just by naming it separate on those plans that you give out, when you go to look at the house, no children. This was also the development where they said people in apartments tend not to have any children, so they didn't want to count those. They weren't going to count the apartments into the calculation.
Because people in apartments don't have children.
Don't have children.
Right, okay.
And I've stated this before, I'm probably one of the few people in a Monroe Manor condominium that don't have children. Sorry, Gary.
Mr. Chiarella?
Yes, I just want to just piggyback on Ms. Antella's point, but then Mr. Poy's point, because he made it at the last meeting. And I thought it was a good idea then. I wanted to see where we landed with legal and what the precedent was. But I think it's a great idea. I think it's in the spirit of openness and transparency, which we all seem to love, that it would be great to be able to have the whole town be able to see all the candidates and make a decision based upon being informed and based upon what they see. So I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
I have a question in terms of the school seems to have the videotaping, the machinery and all of that, and I'm not certain, how that piece of it works. Do we support that? Do they have to have their own videographer?
Given where we are, given that this is America, and I heard discussions earlier about appropriate raising of funds through appropriate mechanisms, this may be something that can be worked out through contract. Unless, Ms. Antelis, you had a comment?
Well, I was just going to say, when I spoke to Gwen Thornton, basically what she was telling me that I guess school districts were allowing it as a public service because they weren't endorsing anybody. They were really just getting the information out there.
I understand that. I think we need to have a legal discussion about that out of open session, frankly. I have a bit of a stricter view with respect to it. That doesn't mean it can't be done, Mr. Poy, but I think we have to have a conversation about how it would be structured.
I would request, because of this date that's coming up, what someone said, October 23rd, that only gives us a few weeks. So
we can have that discussion, and I don't mean how the debate would be structured, because that's not my business, but rather how the arrangement would be structured, and we can talk about that.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. I did want to say that Ms. Antelis and I both attended a meeting with Senator Greenstein, along with a board member from Cranberry and also a board member from Jamesburg. This meeting was sponsored by the New Jersey School Boards Association. It was not sponsored by Greenstein. And my own assessment of it was that I thought it was a valuable thing to do because my sense was that we did provide some information to a state legislator that I don't think the Senator Greenstein was completely aware of, relative to mandates and all of the mandates that schools face from the state without the funding. the latest school performance report and the inaccuracies in that report and the way that they don't go out and first verify that the information in the report is correct with the individual districts before they publicize it, and various other things. So I thought it was an informative hour and a half meeting with her, and I hope that the New Jersey School Boards Association will continue to do that in the future, because it was a good dialogue, a good opportunity for Board of Education members to talk in small groups with the state legislators.
And thank you. Just to add to that, Senator Greenstein talked about getting a committee together to go possibly testify down in Trenton about, the issues. Because one of the saddest things I heard was from Jamesburg, the Jamesburg rep, where you guys cut every after-school activity. That is the saddest thing I ever heard, And I know that you had no choice. I'm not saying blame. It was just, it's sad to hear that. It really is, when we know what we're offering. And all of it was presented to, Senator Greenstein, and hopefully we'll move ahead with this.
Mr. Zarneski.
Yeah, I'd like to make comment on that also. I didn't attend the meeting with Senator Greenstein. I had wanted to. My work schedule didn't allow, but the New Jersey school boards had set up 2 prior meetings with Assemblyman Benson and D'Angelo that I did attend, and one of my biggest focuses wasn't on just issues in Jamesburg that was brought up. It was also brought up issues that I've been hearing tonight about the buildings going up and underfunding of schools, and I pushed the issue several times with them on the formula for state funding, that it's unfair not just to Jamesburg, but to Monroe and every other school district in the state. And on October 2nd, which is next Wednesday, the Middlesex County and Union County School Board Associations is getting together 3 legislators, Senator Lesnowiak, Assemblyman, I'm bad with names, 2 other assemblymen from other legislative districts. I plan on attending that, and I'm going to take several questions or issues that were brought up here tonight to them, along with my fight to get better state funding and fair funding throughout the state. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Mr. Tesler.
Just real quick, I would like to encourage some of the board members to stop by the planning board meeting. I'm going to try to do 2 things tomorrow. My daughter's back to school night is tomorrow, so I'm going to stop by that, and I'm also going to try to scoot over there as soon as that's done. So.
Mr. Masters.
I'm not done. Just in case, the Senator Greenstein will be with Dr. Hamilton on Sunday. I know he kind of said it, nobody really said anything. She'll also be attending. It's a very high honor, this panel that you're going to be part of, so everybody that can try to make it, it's Sunday at 1 p.m., and it's free. And maybe they'll have refreshments. I don't know. Now they have to. The other thing, somebody came up to the public before, and I'll paraphrase, but this is almost a quote: "We should stop concentrating on education." That was actually said. And I would have to 100% disagree with that. The whole reason we're here is for education. And I can't believe somebody actually said that. And I think once we stop concentrating on education, we're done. That's it.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, closed session resolution. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Township of Monroe hereby moves to go into closed session in accordance with Sunshine Law, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, NJSA 10:4-6 through 10:4-21, to discuss the following subjects: personnel, level 3 grievances, personnel employee number 002715, personnel employee number 001060, student matters, harassment, intimidation, and bullying incident 1. The discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public at such time as the matters have been resolved. I need a motion.
Second.
Mr. Chiarella, Mr. Kaufman, all in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstentions? And do we have an idea how long this will take?
I'm going to say 45.
45 minutes approximately. And at this time, the board will go into closed session. Okay, at this time, the board will reconvene into public session. And we will go to Dr. Hamilton. I believe you have some motions to read.
Yes, under board action item, board action, enter the record as item I. It is recommended that the Board of Education hereby deny the Level 3 grievance regarding Monroe Township High School staff dated September 11, 2013. The superintendent of schools and the board's business administrator, board secretary are authorized to take all necessary steps to implement this action of the Board of Education.
Mr. Chiarella, Ms. Antelis. Roll call, Mr. Gorski.
Ms. Antelis.
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella. Mr. Zarneski.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mr. Masters.
Yes.
Mr. Poi.
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso. Mr. Tesler. Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Yes.
Madam Board President, motion passes.
Item J, under board action, it is recommended that the Board of Education hereby deny the Level 3 grievance regarding employee number 1909 dated September 11, 2013. The superintendent of schools and the board's business administrative board secretary are authorized to take all necessary steps to implement this action of the Board of Education.
Mr. Chiarella.
Second.
Second by Mr. Sarneski. Roll call, Mr.
Ms.
Gorski.
Antelis.
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella.
Yes.
Mr. Zarneski.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mr. Masters.
Yes.
Mr. Poi.
Yes.
Mr. Tesler.
Abstain.
So noted. Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Yes.
Madam Board President, motion passes.
Item K, under board action, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the termination of employee 2715 effective immediately based on job abandonment.
Second.
Mr. Chiarella, Ms. Antelis. Roll call, Mr.
Ms.
Gorski.
Antelis.
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella.
Yes.
Mr. Zarneski.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mr. Masters.
Yes.
Mr. Poi.
Yes.
Mr. Tesler.
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Yes.
Madam Board President, motion passes.
And finally, item L, under board action, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the previously discussed agreement between the board, the Monroe Township Education Association, and employee number 1060. The board president, the superintendent of schools, and the business administrative board secretary are hereby authorized and directed to take all necessary steps to implement the aforesaid agreement.
Mr. Chiarella, Ms. Antelis. Roll call.
Ms. Antelis.
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella.
Yes.
Mr. Zarneski.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mr. Masters.
Yes.
Mr. Poi.
Yes.
Mr. Tesler.
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Yes.
Madam Board President, motion passes.
And that concludes board action items.
Okay, at this time, we will go to the public forum. Anyone from the public wishing to speak, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Stephen Ryback, 23 Riviera Drive. I just want to clear up something from my statements before where I might have misspoken. When I was referring to the high-density construction that we're all seeing in our town and the numbers of students that will actually be generated by these developments, I was referring to the negative impact they will have on the school, where they'll actually undermine all the things, incentives that you hope to achieve, and all the good things that we're all doing here in our schools. In no way would I mean that you should not be focusing on education. I'm a retired school principal. I would never say that, so if I misspoke on that, I certainly apologize. But I think most of you here at least would have understood what I meant. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mary Ann Lester, 44 Avenue I. I have a request concerning future agendas. Lots of times in this second public forum, we ask questions. I asked Mr. Gorski last week what legal fees we've accumulated for the Jamesburg lawsuit, and I never got an answer for that. So therefore, I have to wait until the second public forum to get my answer to my questions. So I think it's only fair that in the future on the agenda, the first item be listed as unfinished business, and we get our questions answered as the first agenda item. And so from now on, the first agenda item would be called unfinished business, and that would be for the unanswered questions from the previous meetings.
If I can just say something, of course, that's the discretion of the board. But another way that you could get some of that information that you're asking for that may wait from one meeting to the next, you can always come in and Oprah that kind of information, for example, and you would get it before the next month's meeting, if that's...
Not always with Oprah. Not always. Sometimes it takes a while with that. You have to submit a special form, et cetera. Do you have the answer to my last week's question?
Pardon, you want?
You have the answer for the accumulated legal fees for the Jamesburg laws?
Certainly. As of August 31st, total legal fees paid and charged in the Jamesburg matter are $66,210.
So we're up from the last time I asked about over $40,000, correct? I think it was 24 the last time I did Oprah that one. So we're up another 40,000.
I don't remember the number that I provided you before, but as of August 31st, it's 66,210.
All right. So what about my proposal? Are we going to do number one agenda item from now on is unfinished business for questions from the previous meeting?
Well, we have a format that we have to follow. It's in our policy, and we would have to look at the policy and decide. But I know that the first public forum is always in regard to the agenda.
But I just don't think it's fair to us that we have to wait when it's been, a whole month's time and you don't have the information available to us. It's not our fault.
Well, I understand that, but there's no way that we can carry all the information for the district at a board meeting. So you either have to wait for the next time, or you can call up and ask
Well, sometimes you want questions answered to the general public, as
Yeah,
opposed to
and-
Oprah, so more people are aware of answers
And
to
I
questions.
understand that, but
Okay.
it's sometimes it's just impossible to give you that answer. And I know that none of us want to give you an inaccurate answer. So instead of doing that, we would rather wait and give you the right answer. Because once we give you the inaccurate, that goes around the whole public. And then when we give you the accurate information, then people don't believe us. So we would rather give you nothing and wait and get the accurate information, especially when it comes to numbers. Anyone else?
Joyce Sweeney, 18 Tanglewood Place, for the next few days at least. Those of you board members that I have worked with over the course of the last 10 years, I want to tell you it was a pleasure working with you. Those that I've known that long, the newest members, it's been nice meeting you, and I know you met my brother at a board-related meeting down in South Jersey. I would like to say that for the most part, until the last 4 or 5 months of working within the district, it has been a pleasure. From the beginning, working with Sharon Vogel, to working with Dr. Ferry, to working with Wayne Holliday, there was always a wonderful rapport. I will send to each board member individually a note or a group email to the group. I don't know what issues or items may have been discussed with you regarding myself prior to my leaving. However, I just want to qualify and clarify things from my perspective, and I'll do it in a personal email rather than making it a public forum. And Vi, it's been a pleasure working with you over the years, with Wayne, with Mike, Dr. Hamilton, Jeff, I've known since my son was in school. And I wish you all well. And I'm out of here, so.
Where are you going?
And we wish you luck in your future endeavor. Anyone else from the public?
Good evening, Chrissy Skirby, 8 Seminole Court. I wanted to know in closed session if it was discussed more about the candidates' night. Just to give some background, the October 23rd event that was discussed earlier is being sponsored by all of the parent groups within Monroe Township, the Oak Tree PTA, the middle school PTO, the high school PTO, and it's being moderated by the League of Women Voters. I've mailed out this week invitations to all of the candidates. requesting them to RSVP back if they'd like to participate. The format will be what we've always do. We hold this event every year before the Board of Ed elections. Each candidate gets a certain amount of time moderated by the League of Women Voters to make a statement, and then questions are taken from the audience. Last year we did request to have it videotaped, so maybe that's where the question came from this year. But I would like to know if the district, if we could videotape that and put it on Channel 28.
You can have a proper discussions about it. Okay. At this time, the board in the next couple of weeks will be having a discussion on the videotaping, and we will have an answer for you probably at our next board meeting.
When is that?
The next board meeting is October 16th.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thanks for doing it.
Anyone else?
Shell Arminio, 9 Nathaniel Street. Could you please explain resolutions, all of the closed session items that have been resolved, please, in detail?
Dr. Hamilton?
Mr.
Dr. Hamilton?
Yeah. The board ruled on a couple of grievances.
You want to take that question then, Brian?
Ma'am, the board ruled on 2 of the grievances that were heard in closed sessions. As to the remaining items that were discussed, the board minutes will be prepared with respect to the closed session, and when the need for confidentiality no longer exists or the matters have been resolved as they indicate in their motion, the information can be released, but not at this time.
Okay. Now, you could also redact confidential information in
Well,
the minutes.
the answer is, of course, confidential information can be redacted or blocked out for members of the public who might not be familiar with that term. But sometimes even when we redact, the substance is still apparent. So the key under the Open Public Meetings Act, as I'm sure you know, is that when the need for confidentiality no longer exists, then the matter can be made public.
Okay, so the resolutions that have been satisfied and resolved tonight can be discussed, correct?
Well, they were discussed by virtue of the board acting on 2 motions with respect to the 2 grievances.
Yeah, but they can be discussed in greater detail now that you put a resolution out. So the resolution could be discussed in detail. It's been resolved.
Perhaps you could explain what you're asking me.
Well, there were 2 motions, 2 resolutions after the closed session meeting, and they were voted on.
There were 4.
4 resolutions that were actually voted? Okay, so all of that should now be in the public forum.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I mean, my understanding is once you resolve them and you put them on the table and vote on them, they are now public and should be discussed.
With respect to personnel matters that are addressed in public session by virtue of a motion being voted on, doesn't mean, however, that the substance of the personnel matter, for example, will be discussed. The 2 grievances that were acted upon, those grievances were acted upon. The board made a determination. To the extent there are questions, the board can entertain the questions, but likely will not be in a position to answer those questions.
Well, what were the grievances? You don't have to tell me the personnel or the people involved. What were the grievances?
One of the grievances had to do with a personnel matter, so to speak. Ma'am, you know what? I'm giving you what you're entitled to and no more, because I've got a duty to represent the Board of Education and, frankly, the public, if you will. And the other grievance involved a matter regarding school governance, actually. And that's all that I'm going to tell you this evening, because that's all I'm entitled to tell you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? You're back.
I'm
I
back.
thought you
I
left.
can, another 3 minutes. Joyce Sweeney, 18 Tanglewood Place. This is on a totally different area. There's 2 things. I'm just curious because I'm still paying taxes here. I know there's a new food Met's Culinary Management that has replaced Pomptonian. I know in the past there was always I do believe Nancy Mitrosak was like split between Pomptonian and Monroe, and is that still an agreement with Met's now, which saves money for the district?
Mr. Gorski.
Ms. Mitrosak is an employee solely by the district. She is not an employee at all of Met's.
Well, I know she's not an employee, but wasn't there in the past a service agreement?
No, ma'am. There is a sharing agreement with Ms. Mitrosak and the Middlesex Regional Ed Service Commission where she provides meals to the Academy Learning Center. Previously, Ms. Mitrosak's services were shared with Jamesburg School District as the food service director, but not with the food service management company.
So the district never received a portion of her salary back?
Not from the food service management company. We did from Jamesburg School District, and we're paid by meal agreement with Academy Learning Center.
Okay, so I mean, that's something I guess that can be OPERT, not by me, but by someone else. And the other thing, I'd just like to point out that back when Dr. Ferry was here and the closed session used to occur prior to personnel board action and BA information being voted upon, it was decided that there should be that clause put in that says personnel items, where did it go? Personnel items, superintendent will recommend board-approved personnel report following discussion in executive session. That is really, if you look at it, a moot point because closed session is now following voting on everything. So why can't the personnel items be part of the agenda that the public gets ahead of time? Just a question.
Anyone else? Seeing no one, our next scheduled Public Board of Education meeting will be Wednesday, October 16, 2013, 7 o'clock p.m. at the Monroe Township High School. Motion to adjourn. Oh, Mr. Kaufman, and who was Mr. Masters? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Meeting adjourned.